This meeting is being recorded.
All right, hello, we are group 3, and today we're going to be talking about a discussion question. For our situation, a teacher enters your principal's office. The teacher immediately starts to tell you everything you're doing wrong, including how you just disciplined the teacher's own child. Since this is not the first time this has happened, you decide to increase the teacher's responsibility by assigning extra duty activities in which the teacher is not comfortable with the intent of driving the teacher from your district. Discuss any ramifications that might arise out of your actions and rewrite the scenario with a more appropriate solution. So for the first part, what would some ramifications that could follow with handling the situation this way? A couple of things that I thought of is an unhappy teacher who doesn't like their position or duties is going to be less effective. Handling the situation this way is going to have a negative effect on the overall school culture, which would lead to a negative staff environment where teachers could become less motivated and more hostile. Not only is this not ethical, as an administrator, there is a high chance it won't just be a one-time thing. If this has continued to happen time and time again, I think it would catch up to the administrator and end up causing some inconveniences in the long run.
Yeah, I think, Carson, what you said about it not being ethical is super important. If you have a problem with someone, you need to address it. You can't do this. This seems super passive aggressive. Like, hey, you know what? I have a problem with you, so I'm just gonna try to make your life really, really hard. And as an administrator, that is absolutely not what we should try to do. We should try to make every employee's life easier. And do what we can to make sure that they know we're supporting them and have their back. This situation, I think the ramifications could be really, really bad if you put someone in a position that they are not comfortable with or that they know nothing about. All of a sudden, the parents that have kids involved with that activity are going to be down your throat because why is this person leading this for our school? Why are they leading this for our kids? So I think definitely you want to address the situation head on, talking to this teacher about what's going on and not try to do this. I'm just going to assign you a bunch of stuff that I know you don't want to do, and hopefully you leave so that you're not my headache anymore. We'll talk about how to rewrite it later.
A definite ramification could be the teacher could file a suit of harassment. If the teacher starts to figure out, hey, principal's not doing this to anybody else. I'm getting stuck with things I didn't ask. Now, I know our contract says we can be assigned extra duty roles, even if we don't want them. That's right within our contract. But if they're getting all these extra duties that they're not comfortable with, and that teacher starts to figure out, hey, this is coming on me and not anybody else, I think that teacher could probably go after a little bit for harassment, that they're kind of singling them out based on their likeness to them or that they don't like them or whatnot. So I think that retaliation from the principal could come back and kick them in a lawsuit potentially if that continued to happen.
I feel like another thing that we could add would be this is happening more than once. They say I would just not even talk to this teacher until you have your admin team with you so that they can hear everything and hear all the sides that are going on. If it becomes a habit as well, you could also have other teachers that see, oh, I'm yelling at a principal, why, and they're getting their way. I could do it as well. And it could just lead to other teachers acting this way to the principal as well. So I feel like having your admin team knowing what's going on and being there through this process as well would be a good thing.
One ramification I thought about is the students. If they have a teacher that is in charge of something that they don't want to be doing, their teacher's probably not going to have the greatest attitude, and ultimately the students are the ones that are going to be suffering. Like, they're not going to enjoy it because the teacher doesn't want to be there. So like as an administrator, it's our job to think about what's best for students, and assigning extra duties to this teacher would not be what's best for those students.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as an administrator, one of your main jobs is being a school leader, and just taking and handling situations that way is not really a very good characteristic of a leader. Because in the end, you're all a team, the same goal. Was there anything else that we would like to add to the ramifications section before we move on?
I think this question's hard because it talks about how this is a teacher, but also a parent that's angry. So separating those two is tricky because you probably talk to a teacher a lot different than you would to a parent.
Yeah, I would agree.
Challenging.
All right, so moving on to rewriting the situation. I think the first thing to identify is that both the individuals involved are doing something that they could do a different or more effective way. So I think the first step would be to de-escalate the situation. If this is unable to be done, find an alternate time to talk about this, just so when tensions are high, it's usually not a good time to solve a problem. The teacher also has the right to know more about their child and why they're disciplined the way they were. I think a proper explanation by the administrator would help the parent and the staff member be on the same page with why the student was disciplined and the situation was handled the way it was. When it comes to assigning more duties with the hope that they leave, that's very unethical, like we kind of unmentioned earlier. Finding an alternate solution, like setting a goal to build a stronger relationship with the teacher and parent, I think would be a better course of action rather than trying to get them out of there.
Yeah, I think, it talks about how the teacher immediately starts to tell you everything you're doing wrong, including how you just disciplined the teacher's own child. It's so important to just take that time, like you mentioned, Carson, and kind of everybody take a breath, think it over rather than attack this right away. So I would definitely want to, hey, I'll listen to you, but why don't you come back in a day or so, and then we can talk about here's what happened, here's why it happened, this is why I disciplined your kid the way that I did, this is what the information that I have about this situation. And then the assigning extra duties part to try to drive the teacher out of your district it's just so unethical, and it's so unfair to the kids that are involved in those activities. So you absolutely cannot do that. You have to look at it through the view of, I want all of our students to be successful with whatever activities they're pursuing, and making sure you're putting people in the position to lead those activities where they can experience the most success. If you're putting someone in there just because you want to pile as much stuff as you can on top of their plate so that they want to leave, it's not going to end well for anybody. The kids involved, the parents of those kids, and this teacher. So making sure that you are considering a lot of things before you just decide, yeah, you know what, we're just going to put as much as we can on this teacher's plate to get rid of them. Looking at how you can handle that a little bit better is super important.
My thought, this kind of got me thinking. There's been years I've coached where I've had some difficult parents that weren't shy about giving me their 2 cents, whether it was after games or in an email. And the response that I've tried to use oftentimes in those situations, when a parent's mad at me or whatnot, I'll say, I'm really sorry you feel that way. When you're ready, I'd like to have a professional conversation with some possible solutions in mind to prevent this from happening again. And I try to keep that really kind of short and direct. So that's my kind of having that go-to line, that I'm sorry you feel that way. When you're ready, I'd love to have a conversation with solutions, has kept me from getting emotional, because it's really easy to get emotional in those situations. And my guess is, in this situation, the principal's kind of going off emotion. They were mad. They wanted to kind of retaliate. So that's the way I've learned to kind of not hide, but keep those emotions at bay, to try to handle it as an adult. And it seemed to have worked. It's worked well for me. And a lot of times after I do that, the parent leaves me alone because they know I'm not going to engage in that conflict or that argument. And I think as a principal, I could kind of do the same thing with a staff member. Hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's give it 24 hours. We'll come back tomorrow. When we come back, let's be professional. Let's have some solutions ready to go. See what we can do to not let this happen again, and get ourselves on the same page. Another thing that our district is currently doing, because there was some maybe a little bit of distrust between some teachers and admin, is we created a tab committee, and the tab is teachers, administrators, and a couple board members, just to open the lines of communication to make sure that teachers could have that voice, or go in with things they're frustrated with, like everything you're doing wrong and how you disciplined a child or whatnot, have that voice without the fear of retaliation, because you have other admin present, you have board members present, and it's one or two typically. And that's really been helpful, to prevent some of this type of animosity or this frustration between teachers and principals. So those are some things that I would probably do to maybe rewrite this, and how I would handle it a little bit different if it were to happen to me.
I agree with a lot of that as well. I really do think of taking a day to think about everything and schedule another time to discuss what happened, so the teacher and the principal can both explain themselves. Where I went to school and where I'm teaching now, for the coaches, they always do like a 24-hour rule where everybody gets to go home, kind of relax, chill out about it. Even can get the story straight. Like sometimes I ran into the position of a parent yelling at me once and not even knowing the entire story. So just to kind of clarify that before even a parent just gets so mad right away, they could talk to the kid, figure out what happened, and then come talk to you. But at the end of the day, adding an extra duty cannot happen to add to another teacher, no matter what. But at the same time, it could be discussed. So if a teacher is feeling overwhelmed and feeling like they have a lot of duties, a discussion needs to be made with them too as well.
I agree with what everyone said. What Molly said was so important. If they're going to share all these concerns, they have to have some solutions ready to go in mind that can help solve the problem. Otherwise, the discussion is not getting anywhere. It's not solving anything. And if it continues, then I think it's pretty important for the administrator to be documenting. If they're constantly coming into your office and telling you what you did wrong, that's not very professional. So it's up to the administrator, principal, to be documenting those in case it did get to a point where it's out of control. You have some form of documentation to show what is going on. And maybe if it gets to that point, does a teacher need to be on a plan? It wouldn't necessarily be about teaching. Maybe it would be about just professional behavior. I don't know. It's one thing.
I like that you brought up if this has happened more than once, because I mean, we all know as teachers, we can get pretty wound up, and sometimes there's just that breaking point. And I think as a principal, if you know your staff well enough, and a teacher does this once, if does this once, maybe twice, that's just their way of maybe getting rid of that stress. Now, that might not be the right way to do it, but I think you probably have to approach maybe every teacher just a little bit different, because it's just how they handle certain things. Now, if it's continuing to happen because it says not the first time, or if it's starting to get really degrading or whatnot, that's another ballgame. But my guess is this probably happens more times than not, maybe, especially in bigger districts where there's just a lot of staff. I'm sure principals have ran into this often. So you kind of have to maybe figure out maybe what is winding this teacher up so much. Is it the teacher itself, or is there stuff going on that's leading to that extra stress where they're kind of going off the edge and handling it not very well?
Yeah, I think like you said, this is, if it's happening more than once, as an administrator, I'm happy that this is happening in my office with the door shut. It's not happening in the hallway where all the other teachers are seeing it, or at a sporting event where half the town is seeing this teacher yell at your administrators because you're upset at a coach or something like that, or upset with them. Making sure that, I'm okay with the teacher coming and venting to me in this intimate setting. If it's a public setting, I think it's completely different, the way you have to go about handling it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of teacher contracts are very similar, that extra duties are a part of the contract. But making additional changes or adding things during the school year, or kind of just as you see fit, I don't think is a very professional way of doing it as an administrator. One method that we use at our school is at the start of the school year, it's talked about, and there's a site with all the activities that need volunteers or need help throughout the school year. And it's just kind of first come, first serve to what you sign up for, and you have to sign up for 2 activities. So if you choose to do it that day, you can have a better choice of what you do. If you decide to kind of do it as you go, you might not get your first pick, but each staff member has 2 activities that they're kind of required to do.
Yeah, and there's a difference between not comfortable with and not want to. So I would not be comfortable coaching golf or helping with golf. But I don't want to coach basketball because it's a long season. I'd be comfortable, but don't want to. So there's definitely a difference there too. And what's best for kids. I mean, you don't want me to coach golf. That's not best for kids. So it's kind of what they decide to give. And my guess is it's the stuff if it's not comfortable, that's a different ball game.
I think somebody said it too, like having another administrator there or the administrative team would be helpful too. If you're not getting anywhere with all these conversations, it might be time to have somebody else there to help find a solution to the problem.
Yeah, I agree. It would never hurt having more eyes or on the situation.
It's tough because they're both in the wrong. Like both the principal and the teacher probably did what they shouldn't have done. So you gotta change the situation for both. But it has to probably start with the principal kind of taking the lead and figuring out how to prevent the situation from happening again.
I think they need to figure out what the root of the problem actually is, because if it is really like with the student being disciplined, that's different because that's a parent. And as a parent, I can be pretty passionate too. So I can see how that could get out of hand if you're talking about your own kid. So that would be important to figure out what the main issue is, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a very realistic situation. I think that's something that comes as part of being an administrator. Sometimes people don't like the decisions you make, or they feel that you're the best person to take their anger out on. Other than that, do we have any other additional things for our discussion? All right. Well, thank you.